This first song that we're going to sing today is a new one, and it is not an easy one, but it's a great song. And I picked it a couple of weeks ago, before this week. I don't know what your week was like, but Rusty and I had a really rough week. We had a fire. We had a tiny little water leak, which turned out to be not as big a deal, but it was a tough week. But first things first, this song is about what's the priority. And the priority is not the problems that we have. The priority is our relationship with God. So I'm going to say a little prayer about this song because it's a tough one to sing before we start it. And then I want you guys to sing it with us. It's been on K-Love a lot. It's like their number 2 song. So maybe you've heard it and you can sing louder than we can, which would be awesome. Dear God, we just ask that you are with us as we praise today, because that's what this is all about. It's all about you. It's not about us. And if we make a mistake, you know where our heart is. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Or more than one mistake. Okay. All the things that I have held dear, the vanities that whispered in my ear, what would I do if they all disappeared? Riches and fame and all that they could buy, I've come to find they never satisfy. What would I gain if my soul's the prize? I don't want to love what the world loves. I don't want to chase what the world does. I only want you. I only want you. First things first, I seek your will, not my own. Surrender all my wants to you. Keep the first thing first. To live your truth, walk your ways, set my eyes, Lord, I fix my face on you. All my desires reversed, to keep the first thing first. I give it all, my life an offering. My heart is yours, so have your way in me. Your kingdom's all I want to see. I don't want to love what the world loves. I don't want to chase what the world does. I only want you. I only want you. First things first, I seek your will, not my own. Surrender all my wants to you. Keep the first things first. To live your truth, walk your ways, set my eyes, Lord, I fix my face on you. All my desires reversed, to keep the first things first. To keep the first things first. All my desires reversed, to keep the first things first. To keep the first things first. First things first, I seek your will, not my own. Surrender all my wants to you. Keep the first things first. To live your truth, walk your ways, set my eyes, Lord, I fix my face on you. All my desires reversed, to keep the first things first. To keep the first things first. To keep the first things first. All my desires reversed, to keep the first thing first. Prayer works. Thank you, Jesus. Give thanks to the Lord, our God and King. His love endures forever. For he is good, he is above all things. His love endures forever. Sing praise, sing praise. With a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, his love endures forever. For the life that's been reborn, his love endures forever. Sing praise, sing praise, sing praise, sing praise. Forever God is faithful, forever God is strong, forever God is with us, forever, forever. From the rising to the setting sun, his love endures forever. And by the grace of God, we will carry on. His love endures forever. Sing praise, sing praise, sing praise, sing praise. Forever God is faithful, forever God is strong, forever God is with us, forever, forever, forever. Hear me when I call, you are my morning song. Though darkness fills the night, it cannot hide the light. Whom shall I fear? You crush the enemy underneath my feet. You are my sword and shield, though troubles linger still. Whom shall I fear? I know who goes before me, I know who stands behind. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns forever, he is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. My strength is in your name. always by my side. I know who goes before me. I know who stands behind. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns forever, he is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The God of angel armies is always by my side.
Good morning and welcome to Stillwater Church. We're so glad you're here to worship with us today. And if you're online, we invite you to be part of this family today as well. So blessed to have everybody here. It is going to be time for us to collect our offering. There's several ways to give. We can give online. You can mail your checks into the church, but we also collect an offering here. And along with the offering, our tithes and our offerings, we collect money for those in need. And it's we help church members, we help the community, whoever God places in our basket to do that. So it is time now for us to collect that offering. Pat, I do not see the baskets up front. I think we forgot the baskets this week. So, oh, he found them. I think we saved them for the children, but they weren't here this way. Terry, do you want to help him? He's got 2 baskets. Well, while they're collecting that, I read this little story, and I hope I get it right enough to share it with you, but it's a story about a penny. This young couple, they were invited to his boss's house for the weekend. Well, the wife was extremely nervous. She'd never been to this big house before. And when they drove there, it's like a mansion. She was overwhelmed, but she goes inside and says, "Oh, everything's so beautiful. I've never seen something so lovely. So this is how the rich and famous live." Well, she was put at ease. They treated them graciously. The boss was kind, took them out to dinner several times. And she thought, well, I'll never get to go to any of these restaurants again, but at least I get to enjoy it this time. They were walking on the sidewalk, and as they did, the boss stops. He's just staring down at the sidewalk. Well, the young couple didn't know what to do. Do we walk on by him? What should we do? Should we wait? They walk up closer and they look. It's like, what is he staring at? And there on the ground was a dirty, filthy, black penny. The man is standing there. He slowly bends down, picks it up, smiles, and sticks it in his pocket. Well, this drove the lady crazy. Like, why would he pick up the penny? He doesn't need the penny. He's got all the money in the world. Why is he getting a penny? Finally, she gets brave enough during the dinner to ask him about this penny. She says, "So, that must have been a really rare penny that you found on there." And she said, "So, it must be worth a lot of money." And he picks it out, smiles, and hands it to the lady. And he said, "Read what it says." So she looks at the little penny, and it says, "Trust in God. In God we trust." And he said, if God's telling me to trust in him, and his name is on this penny, then he said, even this coin is holy to me. He said, so when I see a penny on the ground, it's a reminder, God's giving me a message. Do I really trust him? Is this really important to me? He said, so I stop, I pray, and then I pick that little penny up and put it in my pocket. And he said, if God leaves a message for you, who am I to pass it by? So cherish it. So, God's starting a conversation with him with that little penny. And I thought today as we were collecting, and I thought we'd have little children here doing that, even our pennies matter to God. It's what we do with them. It's what's in our hearts. It's how we give, and give with everything that we have. Thank you. Wow. It's time for daylight savings time. It's Pastor's favorite day of the week. He's already shared that. So we spring forward, meaning we lose 1 hour of sleep during the nighttime. So remember to set your clocks to spring forward. Ladies are still doing the sugar fast, and it doesn't matter if we're perfect on it, what we're doing. We are reading this amazing spiritual book that's changing our lives. And we're going to do that and up until Easter. And Easter, the fast will be over. But it's what we've learned through this. That's what's going to stay with us. There's going to be a special memorial gathering for Emo, Karen Kaler, and Emo Kaler Jr., which was Emo's father. They all passed away last year. And so Linda Randall has arranged this with Karen's cousin Betty, that she wants to have a special little event here at church to remember Karen, to come and share your stories with Karen, share what you remember about them and fun times. I think there's food provided. This is in the bulletin. So if you haven't picked up your bulletin, it explains it. Please let Linda know if you're able to come. She'd like to have a count of who's going to be here, and that would be March the 20th. And I think that's it for us. Thank you. Oh, and now it's time for Children's Church. Okay. Nicole, we have a child. We have many children here, and some older and some younger ones, but yes, thank you.
When I was a kid, I remember wanting certain gifts for my birthday or for Christmas. And, as the years came and went, there was always something that I kind of had my eye on. As a kid, you get shiny toys or whatever it is that you want, and you play with them for a little while, and then they go by the wayside. And every season brings something new, right? A new fad, a new thing that all the kids want, all the kids are playing with. So I remember experiencing that as a child. But when I think back to all the gifts that I got as a kid over birthdays or over Christmases, there are a couple of them that really stick out. I remember I was, still a pretty young kid, but I remember specifically one year, whether it was birthday or Christmas or whatever it was, I really, really, really wanted a Game Boy Advance. Now, it has been many years since those have come and gone, but it was just this little handheld game console made by Nintendo. And all of my friends had something similar or the same one, and it had Super Mario and Mario Kart and Zelda and all the games that I loved to play. Well, as a kid, I didn't really play a whole lot of video games. We didn't really do that too much in our home. It was pretty rare, and most of my video game experience came at friends' homes. But I had my eye on this Game Boy Advance. I wanted it very badly. So after what to me must have felt like millennia going by, I finally convinced my parents. So I forget what event it was, whether it was Christmas or birthday, but whatever it was, I tore open a gift, and there it was. The Game Boy Advance that I had longed for so deeply. So I pulled that thing out, and of course, I put that game cartridge in, and I played it, and I played it, and I played it. I played it every waking moment I was allowed to. I loved that thing. I played it so much, in fact, that I got to thinking, and I don't know how this train of thought made sense to me, but it made sense to me in my child's mind. I was like, man, this thing has brought me so much enjoyment, I have to share this. So I got back at my parents and I was like, listen, you need to get Miranda, my younger sister, one of these too. How in the world are you going to allow me to enjoy this and not allow her to enjoy the same thing? And the good Lord only knows how, But somehow my begging convinced them, and they got her one too. I don't think she quite enjoyed it as much as I did. She was not then and is not now into gaming as much as I was. But they got her one too. And in my young mind, I thought, man, this toy has brought me so much enjoyment. How could I keep that to myself? I have to share this. And the first person I thought of was, well, my sister, the other person in my life who was close-ish to my age that I spent a lot of time with. I have got to share the good news of the Game Boy Advance. Well, we all have things in our life we like to share, right? It's been 4.5-ish years or so since Nicole and I got married. And before getting married, we were dating long distance for a while and preparing for a wedding and stuff. And then the day came and the day went and we got married, and it was beautiful and we had a lot of fun. But of course, when you first get married, there is a period of adjustment. A period of adjustment that goes from living long distance to living in the same house. And there were no earth-shattering discoveries or major problems or issues or anything to that magnitude, but there are still adjustments. There's still things you've got to get used to and got to figure out and kind of get into the rhythms of life. Well, one of the things that we both love to do is we both love to eat good food. For me, growing up in Southern California, then spending a somewhat significant amount of time in the San Francisco Bay Area meant I loved to eat good food, and I had the chance to do that quite a lot. Well, we got married and we'd go out to eat on occasion. And when I go out to eat, I go to places, what I like to do, which I think is pretty normal, is sit down in that chair, open up that menu, order what I want to order, and then eat what I want to eat because I ordered it. Nicole, on the other hand, likes to try a little bit of everything, which is fine. But that also means that when she orders what she wants to eat that, and she wants to try what I have ordered too. And the truth is, there is no wrong or right way to do it, right? It's just a simple matter of preference, the way you like to enjoy the food that you have ordered. But for me, it has been a lesson, a learning experience, if you will, in learning to share. Something I thought I learned as a young child. Learning to share, right? Well, sometimes we've all got to learn to share. Maybe for you, it's something in your personal life at home with a spouse, a child, a parent, a sibling. You've got that one thing you like to keep to yourself. Maybe for you, it's an electronic device like an iPad, or it's the remote, or it's something else altogether, your favorite object, item, whatever it might be. And then when that other person in your life who is oh so close comes in and wants to use it too, there's a little bit of that you kind of want to hold on, right? You want to hold on tight. Or perhaps it's not in your personal life. It's maybe in your professional life, at your job, in your career, whatever that might look like for you. You've got an idea. You've got a thought. You think this will help our company, our organization. But then, as is often the case, you need to have a team. You need to have people that help. You need to share ideas. But when it comes time to present to the boss, you want it to be yours, right? You want to say, I came up with this. This is my idea. I want the credit for this, the raise, the promotion. Sometimes we have got to learn to share. Well, today, we're beginning a new series. We're beginning a new series in the Gospel of Matthew. And we're going to spend the next 7 weeks in Matthew, and specifically in Matthew chapter 13. You see, in Matthew chapter 13, we've got something that might be familiar to many of you. In Matthew chapter 13, Jesus tells 7 parables. And these 7 parables have come to be known colloquially as the kingdom parables. You, or many of you, will probably recognize them because they often begin by saying something like, Jesus sits there and he says, the kingdom of heaven is like. And then he begins to describe a scene or give a scenario. And so over the course of the next 7 weeks, we're going to look at each of these 7 parables. And we're going to see what they mean for us as we look forward to living in the kingdom and as we live today in our worlds that are immediately around us, and what that kind of kingdom living can mean for us now. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to open our Bibles to Matthew chapter 13 each week for the next 7 weeks, and we're going to look. We're going to see what we've got going on and see what we can learn. Now, Matthew chapter 13 gives us a little bit of context. So let's begin by reading just the first couple of verses here. Matthew chapter 13, verse 1. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it, while all the people stood there on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. Now, if you are one of the people who attends our weekly Bible studies here on Wednesdays, you will know that we often read a section of the text, and then there's a question that I like to ask. That question is, what are you seeing? What is happening here? What's going on in this text that we can observe? So we are going to ask that question of this text right now. What is going on here? Now, some of the things might be easy to kind of glean off the surface. Others of the things that are going on in this text, we might need a little bit of deeper context to be able to understand what we're reading, what we're seeing. It's important to note that here, Matthew chapter 13 represents kind of a major turning point in the ministry of Jesus according to the Gospel of Matthew. First, up to this point, Jesus has not yet spoken in parables. Now, if we go back into Matthew chapter 13, we can find examples of Jesus speaking in metaphors or similes or things that sort of resemble parables. But this is really the first time that he fully leans in and tells parables in the way that we are so used to seeing him do. So that's what he's going to do here. He's going to lean in, fully develop the parables to make a point, to illustrate, in this case at least, the kingdom of heaven. And hopefully, the people around him will understand that. Hopefully, the people that are there listening will learn a lesson, right? Secondly, this chapter represents a major shift in another way as well. You see, prior to Matthew chapter 13, what we find in the land of Israel that Jesus is familiar with is that the synagogues, the places of worship for the Jews, are open to him. He has gone into those synagogues often as a welcome guest, and even at times to teach or to preach or to read from the text. Once we hit Matthew chapter 13 and thereafter, that is no longer the case. The Pharisees, the Sadducees, the teachers of the law there during that day, at this point in Matthew chapter 13, become openly hostile, and they begin to plan a way that they are going to get him. And this is where that shift happens in the Gospel of Matthew. So, a couple of major turning points for Jesus. Things are shifting and changing. So that's what we find here in Matthew chapter 13. Now, you'll notice that at the end of Matthew chapter 12, that leads right here into this chapter, we've got kind of some strange, some odd moments, right? First, we see he has a run-in with the Pharisees, the teachers of the law. They were tense. And you can see that that is kind of the tipping point. It's all led up to that. Now there's some conflict here. Pharisees on the one hand, Jesus on the other hand, they are not getting along. Secondly, we have what I consider to be a very unusual moment with Jesus' own family. We read there right at the end of chapter 12, he disowns them almost in a way, right? He says, who are my mother? Who are my brothers? These are my mother and brothers, as he points to the people who are surrounding him, not to his own family. So this is what we find leading into Matthew chapter 13. There are some strange things going on. There are some major shifts happening. This is where we find Jesus. So let's continue on. We're going to continue on verse 3 of chapter 13. Let's see what Jesus has to say to us. A farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seeds fell on good soil, where it produced a crop, 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear. Now, usually what we will do here at this point is we will look at this text and kind of take it apart and try to interpret and understand, what is Jesus saying? What does he mean when he says these words, when he tells this parable? But one of the advantages to this parable, and this parable in particular, is that we don't really have to do that, because all you've got to do is skip down a few verses and Jesus explains the whole thing. He tells us exactly what he means. So why don't we skip down to verse 18 and read what Jesus says. He is going to explain it kind of line by line in detail, and he's going to tell us, when I say this, this is what I mean. So let's read it. We once again begin verse 18. He says this, "Listen then to what the parable of the sower means. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart. This is the seed sown along the path. The seed falling on rocky ground refers to someone who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. But since they have no root, they only last a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. The seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. But the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. This is the one who produces a crop yielding 160 or 30 times what was sown." So here's what we find about this parable here. The picture that would have emerged in the listeners' minds would have been very clear. Someone spreading seed to plant a crop was a very common thing for that people in that crowd to have understood, to have seen, or even some of them to have done themselves. In fact, some commentaries have suggested that it is even possible that as Jesus told this parable, they could have looked out and seen someone not too far away doing just that. And then Jesus sees it and uses it as an example to illustrate his point about the kingdom of heaven. So this is what we've got. Everything Jesus says to them would have been relatable. The sower spreading the seeds, the types of ground that the seed is falling on, whether it is good ground or bad ground. Now, depending on what Jesus is, of course, asking them is, what type of ground are you? The gospel, he says, is going to spread. You are going to get the opportunity to hear it one way or another. The question for you is, what happens after you hear it? What do you do when you have received the message? Now, I think for us here today, this is where the text gets interesting. See, for us, this parable and this story is something we have probably heard before. This is probably not the first time you've heard this parable read in your life. So we come here and we say, okay, this is familiar. Many of us have heard this. Many of us have heard or read Jesus' explanation of this. But that brings us to something interesting in the text. You see, we read the parable, we read the explanation, but there is a piece of the text in the middle that we have yet to read. And I think this piece of the text in the middle is where the key lies for what we are doing today. So between the parable and the explanation, there's a conversation that happens between Jesus and his disciples. And so let's return to the text once more and read that conversation. Let's see what the disciples ask. Let's see how Jesus answers. Let's see what that means for us. This time we'll read together starting in verse 10. The disciples came to him and asked, "Why do you speak to the people in parables?" He replied, "Because the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, but not to them. Whoever has will be given more, and they will have in abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. This is why I speak in parables. Though seeing, they do not see. Though hearing, they do not hear or understand. In them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah. You will be ever hearing, but never understanding. You will be ever seeing, but never perceiving. For this people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise, they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. But blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. For truly I tell you, many prophets and righteous people long to see what you see, but did not see it, and hear what you hear, but did not hear it. When we initially come to this part of the text, I think it can be easy to fall into a little bit of confusion, or even maybe become a little bit upset with Jesus here. Come on, we might say, Jesus, how are you going to tell this parable? Then when we ask about it, say that some of you get the secrets of the kingdom and some of you do not. How can you let some people in and shut some other people out? How can you willfully withhold the message that you are trying to communicate? What's the deal with that? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Jesus, I think, would say in response, hold on just a moment. I'm not sure you're understanding what I'm saying here. This is not the reason I tell the parables. Well then, Jesus, what do you mean? Explain to us what you are doing here when you say that. Though seeing, Jesus would say, they do not see. And though hearing, they do not understand. He would say, this is the point. Although there are various types of people that we see in this parable, there are different types of people, different types of ground that are described. In reality, everybody falls into one of two categories. On the one hand, you have people who hear and understand, and on the other hand, you have people who hear and do not understand. You've got one or the other. You will hear and you will not see what's happening, or you will truly listen and open your ears and your eyes and your heart, and then you will understand. So on the one hand, what do we have? We have people who hear but don't truly understand. When I was in college, as is true for any college student, I had various class requirements I had to fulfill, right? And as someone who was studying religion and theology, one of the class requirements I had to fulfill was take a 2-quarter kind of basic science course. And so I looked at, the school bulletin to see what they were offering. And as I looked there, what I saw was that they were offering a couple of different science courses that were geared towards people like me. And what I mean by that is they offer very basic science courses for people who are not in science-centered degrees and majors. So these are science courses for people who are in religion or theology or art or English or communications or any one of the things that you would consider liberal arts, people who are not going into STEM or to the sciences. So they offer a couple of those. Well, I looked in there, and they were offering a very, very basic physics class, because I don't need biochemistry or conceptual physics or whatever. I just need something very basic to cover the requirement so I never have to think about it again. So I looked at the class, and I signed up for it, and I was like, this will work, this will be great. Now, most of my classmates and people I knew had signed up for the biology equivalent, and I kind of wanted to be in that one, but it wouldn't fit in my schedule, so I had to take this physics class. So I signed up for it, I show up, day one of class, and the class gets going. I show up day in, day out, every day to the lab, doing my thing. And eventually, we get to test number 1. So I take the test. I look down at this thing. I have no idea what I'm looking at. And I was like, this cannot be right. I don't know what's going on here. I take the test. He takes the next week or whatever to grade the test. The professor comes back, and he's like, every single one of you failed. What's going on? And it took a little bit of investigation to figure out what had happened. But here's what had happened. The professor who was teaching this class was someone who had not taught a basic physics class before. He had mostly taught people who were taking physics as a degree and people who wanted to go into engineering and do things like that. And so he had put things on this test that you needed calculus to solve. I have never taken calculus, neither had any of my classmates. So it didn't matter how much I read that textbook, I was never destined to understand what was going on there. Believe me, I heard the lecture. I read the textbook. I did not understand a single thing. Sometimes we hear, but we don't truly understand. And this is what Jesus says here. You've got a group of people, and there are subgroups that we find in here, but kind of the overarching theme is that we have people who are hearing but not understanding. It is falling on ultimately deaf ears and on closed hearts, right? So that's what's happening here. But then you have a second major group here. And you don't really have a whole lot of subgroups described in the parable in terms of the ground that we're seeing. But on the other hand, we have people who listen, who receive the message, and then they go and do something about it. They don't listen to the message and sit and do nothing. The story is told, perhaps apocryphal, about President Franklin Roosevelt, who often endured long receiving lines at the White House. He complained that no one really paid any attention to what he said. One day during a reception, Roosevelt decided to try an experiment. To each person who passed down the line and shook his hand, he murmured, "I murdered my grandmother this morning." The guests responded with phrases like, "Marvelous, keep up the good work. We're so proud of you. God bless you, sir." It was not until the end of the line, while greeting the ambassador from Bolivia, that his words were actually heard. Nonplussed, the ambassador leaned over and whispered, "I'm sure she had it coming." Sometimes we listen, and other times we only just hear without listening. For us, here, today, we have a choice, though. We are going to hear the gospel one way or the other. That is clear based on the parable. The seed will spread. But then for us, it is up to us what we do with it once we hear it. We will get the chance to see what Jesus has to offer. I'm going to read you a section out of the New Daily Study Bible by author William Barclay. And he writes about this parable, or these parables here, that Jesus tells in Matthew chapter 13, that I think helps clarify what Jesus is saying when he says, some get it, some don't. Barclay writes this: the parable has the great virtue that it enables and compels us to discover truth for ourselves. It does not do our thinking for us. It says, here is a story. What is the truth in it? What does it mean for you? Think it out for yourself. The other side of that is that the parable conceals truth from those who are either too lazy to think or too blinded by prejudice to see. It puts the responsibility fairly and squarely on the individual, on you and on me. It reveals the truth to those who desire it, and it conceals the truth from those who do not wish to see it. So what has Jesus done here by telling this parable? And what will he do by telling 6 more parables? He has put the onus, the responsibility on us. It is up to us what we are going to do once we receive the gospel. And we will have a chance to make that decision. We have the choice. Jesus has done his part. He has shared the gospel with us. Now we must do our part and live it out. The gospel is not just some ethereal concept that we can talk about and have questions and answers. The gospel is something that is meant to be lived out in our lives, in our comings and in our goings, in the way we treat the world and the people around us, in the way we deal with the people that we love, and in the way we deal with the people that we don't. So as we listen to the parable, and as we get this set up for the rest of the parables of the kingdom of heaven that Jesus is going to tell us over the course of the next 6 weeks, the call that he is making as he opens up this section, this chapter, this moment in his teaching ministry, is he says, listen, I have some things to share with you, some things about the kingdom of heaven and how we are going to live into that kingdom one day and how we are going to live that kingdom out today. He says, you're going to hear it, but you're going to get to choose which ground it is going to fall on in your own life. And he says, for you, I would encourage you to take that responsibility and then go share it. Because when you do, as the parable says, it will come back 30-fold or 60-fold or even 100-fold. So I guess that leaves us with one final question. What does it mean to share, then, that gospel? What does it mean to harvest that 30, that 60, that 100-fold crop that he is planting? Well, it means, I think, something very, very simple. It means to look at this world around us, and it means to love the people who are in our lives. And like we just talked about, the people who we do love, the people who are our family, our close friends, the people who we spend a lot of time with, maybe our colleagues or our coworkers. But it especially means to love the people that are hard to love. It means to love those people who don't look like us, the people who don't think like us, the people who don't act like us, the people who don't vote like us. It means to love those people in the same way that Jesus chose to love us. So as we go from here today, I want to challenge you all. I want to challenge you all to live that out in your lives this week. And for each and every one of you, that might look a little different. Maybe it will mean volunteering your time somewhere. Maybe it will mean giving a helping hand to somebody who doesn't have the strength or the power to do it themselves. Maybe it just means that as you drive through Starbucks, you pay for the car behind you too. It can look different for each and every one of us. But that is the challenge that we are going to live out this week as a community of people who follow Jesus, is listen to that gospel and turn it around and share it with the people who are out there. Let us pray. Gracious God, we come here on this Sabbath day, tremendously blessed that we are a people with whom you've chosen to share the gospel. I ask that you sow the seeds in our lives in ways where it will increase 30-fold or 60-fold or even 100-fold. Lord, give us the wisdom and the strength and the discernment to love the world around us in the way you have called and to share that gospel with the people in our lives. Bless us, Lord, on this Sabbath day. In your name we pray. Amen.
Blessed be your name in the land that is plentiful, where streams of abundance flow. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name when I'm found in the desert place. Though I walk through the wilderness, blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise. When the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be your name when the sun's shining down on me, when the world's all as it should be. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name on the road marked with suffering, though there's pain in the offering. Blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise.
be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. You give and take away. You give and take away. My heart will choose to say, Lord, blessed be your name. You give and take away. You give and take away. My heart will choose to say, Lord, blessed be your name.
Friends, thank you so much for worshiping with us here at Stillwater. We hope you have a great Sabbath and a wonderful week. We'll see you here next time.
In the darkness, we were waiting without hope, without light.